Our Final Fours are set on both sides. There's actually two universities who are represented in both. We have UConn and NC State. They could face off for the title in both men's and women's sports. UConn plays Alabama Saturday on the men's side. NC State plays Purdue. Speaking of NC State, incredible story. 1,000-1 to win the NCAA championship heading into the ACC tournament, where they had to win 5 games in 5 days just to get in to the NCAA. Then they were 200-1 when the NCAA tournament began. And now entering the Final Four, NC State 20-1 to win the whole darn thing. Let's bring in our finest, Matt Norlander from the On College Basketball podcast, which you can see on CBS Sports Network a lot lately. Let's start by kind of dipping our toes in both the men's and women's here, because UConn's been here and done that, right? I mean, they've won a national championship in men's and women's in the same year before. But we have another team, NC State, as well, that's in the men's and the women's. How about that?
Yeah, no, it's an awesome subplot that's developed here in all of college basketball, for to have two schools make the Final Four in the same year for the first time. And yes, usual suspect with UConn, but for NC State and the women's team, obviously very highly seeded in this tournament. It's a really fun thing. Adds another dynamic, and because we have alternating days, you know, the women on Friday, the men on Saturday, the women on Sunday, the men on Monday. This will continue on here into the weekend, and yeah, it's awesome. I guess I'm going to go on a semi-limb, but not really, and say at least one of those 4 teams is going to cut down the nets and be a national. At least one of the 4 will be a national champion by the time we get to the end of Monday night.
Well, the UConn men are the favorites to do just that. The biggest long shot would be the NC State men. Double-digit seeds are 0-6 all-time in the Final Four. Do you give NC State much of a shot to become the first double-digit seed to play for a championship?
I do not. And I say that as someone who is going to write about the incredible NC State story for CBSSports.com later this week. I would love to personally, Hassel, I'd love to cover something like that. But given that NC State is a significant underdog to Purdue, it is comfortably the lowest rated team across the board that's in this Final Four. It's just hard to get there. So no, I don't. If they're going to do it, they're going to have to keep continuing this outrageous streak where they have not allowed an opponent in the past 6 games to shoot better than 40% from the field. That's going to be a tall task against Purdue and Edey. I mean, Edey, you know, he's a 60% field goal shooter as is. So they're going to need that. Plus, DJ Burns has been all of the hype, and understandably so. But DJ Horn's the team's leading scorer. DJ Horn is the guy that shoots better than 40% from three-point range. So, hey, it's March. Magical. We're technically now into April. We'll see if that can continue. But yes, you mentioned all double-digit seeds, and specifically, no 11 seeds have ever even made the title game after breaking through to the Final Four.
Are you a little jealous? Because you've kind of been a darling in the background of some shots at the Final Four with your Guster is for Lovers thing on your laptop. And now our very own Danny Cannell is coming in, taking the limelight away from you. And he's trying to get there to the Final Four to see his nephew, Mr. Middlebrooks.
Yeah, and how about, like, the shamelessness of Cannell? Like, I'm Ben Middlebrooks' uncle, just putting it on a T-shirt, just begging the cameras to find him there. I fully expect to stroll up to my press seat on Saturday in Arizona, expecting to see either Cannell right next to me on press row, and if that's the case, I'll just rip that off and toss it into the garbage, or I just know he's going to be directly behind me once that game gets tipped off. Congrats to Cannell, and yet another, yes, a little piece of wallpaper here as we head toward a very fun Final Four with no shortage of intriguing storylines.
And I'm not sure many people would take the field over UConn right now in the Final Four. So maybe the question isn't how does UConn win? Maybe it's how don't they win? What would the answer be?
The only ways UConn isn't going to win this national championship is if Alabama has an outrageous performance from three-point range. And by outrageous, I mean it has a game where it takes more than 33s and makes more than half of them. I think something like that, in addition to, you know, knock on wood, we don't want to see any kind of injury or anything like that. You know, but let's remove that even from the discussion altogether. You just have to get something completely out of character for this team. Yes, it has been beaten 3 times, and those 3 games were all on the road against Kansas, Creighton, Seton Hall for varying reasons. But this team is as dominant heading into a Final Four as any team I've ever seen, which includes the UConn team from last year, which set a record by winning 6 games by at least 13 points in a tournament. That had never happened. You see this? The fact that it's only trailed, 5 minutes and 50 seconds total is a joke. So Alabama would have to be outrageously hot, or if it got Purdue, you'd have to have Zach Edey, completely dominating Klingon, the guards playing their best game of their career. It's possible. It's college basketball. 40-minute game in this tournament. It's on the table, but it's not likely. And I'm not picking against UConn. I'm picking UConn to win by double digits until I see a team even get UConn to a close game. I mean, it is searching. Hassel. UConn is looking around. It's looking. It cannot find a close game. It can't find one. So I'm not going to pick one to happen until I see it.
Well, it was 17 years ago to the day that we saw our last team go back-to-back, the Florida Gators in 06 and 07. You mentioned that matchup that a lot of people might be looking for. If UConn runs into Purdue in the championship game, we could see a great big man battle between Klingon and Edey. Can Purdue win this whole thing by going through their 7'4" big man in the middle?
Purdue has to go through Zach Edey if it wants to win the national championship. He is and has been the best player without debate in this sport 2 years running. And I hope that making the Final Four will actually rise Edey's profile and his respect overall. There's been no shortage of respect for Edey from me. I profiled him in depth last year for CBS Sports. We have lauded him consistently on the Eye on College Basketball podcast. But I think he is not somehow, maybe it's because he's not a 6'7" wing that can fly through the air and has ultra athleticism, that he hasn't been recognized for what he is. And what he is one of the best players in the history of men's college basketball. So yes, Purdue will need to play its game through one of the best players in the history of men's college basketball. Again, this list, look at what you're watching. This is an absolute joke, okay? It is crazy. They will need to play through Edey, and if it is UConn versus Purdue on Monday night to cut down the nets, then Edey may well need to have 28, 30-plus points. He may well need to have 14, 15, 16-plus rebounds. He may well need to be on the floor for 37, 38 minutes, and the matchup with Klingon would be incredible. But it can't just be Edey. Braden Smith, who's had a big jump as a sophomore running the offense, he's going to need to play well. Lance Jones, who's come in as a transfer from Southern Illinois and has been a factor, he's going to need to step up big. And you'll need the role players like a Trey Kaufman-Renn to step up, Fletcher Lawyer to step up. It is absolutely possible and on the board, but Edey needs to continue to be the best player in the sport for Purdue to win 2 more games.
So you have these great storylines with several of these teams, like Purdue with the giant Edey, the best player in the country after losing to a 16 seed. You have the defending champs, UConn, just rolling everybody. You have the quote-unquote Cinderella in NC State as an 11 seed. The forgotten team here is Alabama. They're an 11.5-point underdog against UConn. Are we doing them a disservice by overlooking them a little bit?
No, I think that's more about respect with UConn after UConn got a game in the Elite Eight against the #2 offense, a 29-win Illinois team that won the Big Ten tournament and then could not keep it close and was on the wrong end of a 30-0 run. So Alabama is receiving some shrapnel after what UConn did to Illinois. And also the school, its fan base. How do you like this one? Because normally on the football side, it's your team on the gridiron that's a heavy favorite going into a national semifinal. Not such the case here. They are capable of dropping 100+. I mean, they've done it a dozen times this season, and they've got the capacity to make it an interesting game. If they get hot, yes. Alabama, I'd say this. We aren't giving enough credit just yet, and it is Tuesday. The game is played on Saturday. We're going to be talking about this a lot more all week long on CBS Sports HQ and CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. So we'll be getting plenty into Alabama, but it will take its best defensive effort of the year combined with its best offensive effort of the year to beat UConn. So Mark Sears, listen, I think he's a second-team All-American. He's a really good player. But the size down low, the interior, how they would actually face up and battle with Klingon is a major thing to watch for. But I will say this. They do have the firepower to keep it with UConn, so I am not just casually dismissing their chances, but it is undeniable that Alabama has the least compelling storyline of the 4 teams that make up a very compelling Final Four.
That's Matt Norlander from the Eye on College Basketball podcast. What's coming up on the latest episode?
I'm interviewing a sit-down with the one and only Ian Eagle. That's going to be in your feed on Tuesday. He's obviously the lead play-by-play voice for the Final Four on the men's side. Cannot wait to talk to the Birds, so that'll be next up in the feed.
All right, taking over for Jim Nance, who saw his Houston Cougars bow out before the Final Four. Latest Eye on College Basketball podcast. Scan, follow. You'll be alerted when it